Quick heads up before we jump in. I am broker in charge eligible, but I am not your broker in charge. What I'm sharing today is just to help guide you and somewhat educational. But if you have any questions about something that applies to your certain situation, definitely check with your broker in charge before doing it. Today, we're going to go over the offer to purchase and basically how to fill it out. I have a role when I am training or helping train any of the agents in my firm or any other agent friends that there should be no blank spaces. They are legally binding documents. That is an offer on a property, and you need to make sure there are no blank spaces. So let's start. We're just going to make up things on the way. I'm going to use random names, people I know, so on and so on. So make sure you are finding the correct information. Don't ever make up something on the contract. So we're just going to use my name. I can type today. Then we'll use a friend's name. And then we're going to do 123 Anywhere Street. And I am located in Fayetteville. There's a zip code. We are in Cumberland County. For lot, we'll just go with lot 123, block section 2. Subdivision will say Anywhere Homes. The plot book, pages, and the PIN, which is your tax ID number, and other description. This isn't always something that will be able to be found or very descriptive. Most of the time, if you're in a subdivision or something, it will have some type of description. And most of the time, that's going to include such as um, the subdivision, and then it's probably going to have the lot number, a section number, and then depending on where you're at, it's probably going to have the plot and slide also. Something similar like that. I am doing a contract right now where all it says is 3 acres. That is on all the tax documents, the deed, everything, the legal description, 3 acres. And then you will have a deed book and a deed page. The next section is it going to include any manufactured homes? In this case, we're going to say it will not. If it does, there are other things you have to do with that. Will it include an off-site or separate septic lot? Book or boat slip, sorry, garage, parking space, or storage unit. Most of the time, you're not going to use this in my area, but if you are somewhere like in the coast or a lake type community, there's a chance you might have a boat slip. Or with condos and townhouses, there might be a chance there's a garage that's not attached to the actual building. Or if you have a parking space that's not attached, trying to think of if I know of any place offhand where you're off the property. Like this isn't going, this will be things that are not included on the lot in which the property is on. Additional parcels. That's going to be like, do you have two pieces of property next to each other, but they're separate parcels? Are you buying multiple parcels, so on and so on? For easy remembrance, I'm just going to do 123,000. I know houses do not exist in that price point in my area, but just, so later on I can remember what I put. For due diligence, we'll say 1,000. Um, Make sure you click how they're going to pay it. Lately, a lot of things are being paid through Zelle. Whichever way you do this, make sure your lender, if they're not paying cash, and I'm not saying cash for due diligence, I'm saying cash as far as purchasing the whole property, so paying $123,000 in cash, that your lender is okay with it. Some lenders are okay with Cash App and Venmo, some are okay with Zelle, some are not okay with Zelle. Make sure you're doing that because when it comes down to proving where that money came down to, you have to be able to do so. Most of the time we don't have earnest money in my area, but we'll put 500 or you know what, let's just go ahead and make that 1,000. Just making it easy thing. Most attorneys, they either want a certified check or a wire transfer. My firm does not hold earnest money, the attorney does. So just make sure that you are doing that correctly. In this case, we do not have any additional. I am currently on Zip Forms. So on Zip Forms, you have to hit a space bar after you put a zero in, or otherwise, when you don't hit the space bar, it will go away. So zero and then space bar. We're not doing any seller financing. We do not have a building deposit. So seller concessions. This is going to be seller paid closing cost. You're either going to have a percentage or you're going to have an amount. This is something you're going to get from the lender. Now, there are other things you can add to the seller closing costs. So let's say you have a VA buyer where they don't have a down payment and they have no money for inspections or whatnot. You may want to include that in seller concessions because a part of the closing cost, you know, buyer's expenses associated with the purchase of the property. Inspections could be that. And the lender. So normally I'll ask the lender, and it's going to be based on different things like the time of the year, your taxes, so on and so on. So in this case, we're just going to say 5,000. Due diligence period. So you have two options here. You have the period beginning on the effective date and extending through 5 p.m. on insert date only. So here's what I don't like about this spot. Let's say we go to, we're just going to do a couple dates and we click this box. Today is October 30th, so that is 5 days. But let's say they don't respond and get you this contract back until the 3rd of November. Now it's over. So I normally do not use this spot. I use this spot, and then let's just say we want 10 days. So that way, the day this becomes effective, then this 10 days kicks in. So normally we do 30-day closing, talk to your lender, make sure. So in this case, 30 days is the 29th or the 30th, somewhere around there. So we're going to say December 1st. Just make it easy. Your escrow agent, this is going to be your attorney. By the way, I am not going over everything here. I'm going over what needs to be filled out. This is an attorney I use all the time. I am not advertising her or doing a shout out. It's just simple. As you see, my computer autofills everything. And we're going to go down to this spot. Items leased are not owed. This is going to be security systems, alarms, appliances, rent to own things, so on and so on. If you have something like a security system from Vivint, ADT, there's several different ones where you pay for them monthly instead of owning them right out. If you have nothing, not applicable. Items that do not convey. Normally, this is going to include fixtures, personal property, things like that some people think normally do convey but don't, such as your refrigerator. Or if you have, let's say, a $4,000 refrigerator, you're going to be taking, but you're going to replace it with like a cheap $1,000 refrigerator before closing, then the you as a buyer's agent needs to make sure whatever fridge is coming or not coming is in here. So in this case, we're going to use an example such as a hot tub because they are hardwired in, so they are kind of like a fixture. So we're just going to say the hot tub's not coming with the house. Personal property. Most of the time, you're going to be putting the refrigerator, fridge here. There are different ways of doing it. Talk to your broker in charge or call the legal hotline. But most of the time, I recommend you putting make, model, if you have a serial number. A lot of agents just do fridge at time of showing. Not saying this is right or wrong. Talk to your broker in charge of how they want you to do it. So this comes down to how they're going to pay for the house. If they're going to be paying with cash, you would click here, and you really should have verification of cash available for settlement. There are different ways you can do this. It could be a bank statement, it could be a letter from the bank. I've had letters written from the managers at a branch because if you have an investor or you have someone that has a large amount of assets, maybe they don't want everyone knowing. Or if you're going to put a lowball offer in, you might not want to tell them, like, hey, I know we're going 20,000 below, but here's my proof of cash, and I actually have, 10 times the amount needed for this property. So, different ways of doing that. You have questions, talk to your broker. In this case, we're going to do loans and other funds, a first mortgage. Now, if you're doing a second mortgage, which is going to be very rare unless if you are doing lately, because we have assumable loans from years ago where people were getting in the twos and threes, that where a second mortgage might come into place. Most likely aren't going to be dealing with this. Other funds, another rarity, but these are going to be the questions that you'll be able to answer by talking to your buyer's lender. We are going to do a VA loan for simpleness. Sorry, 90% or more of my clients are VA, so you're going to hear me talk about VA loans a lot. If you're doing an FHA, if you're doing conventional, if you're doing USDA, other types, um, can't think of another. Well, there's rental loans and so like that, but these are going to be your most common ones. And this is the buyer intent. So I've had some agents get on me for not putting the correct amount in here. And I always go with just the total of the purchase price because things can change. We could get to closing and they might not need a 10% down payment now. They only need a 5% down payment. And I mean, it does matter, but it doesn't matter. So, once again, a question for your broker in charge of how they prefer you to do it. In this case, we do not have a property that they need to buy, sell. If they do, you would click this one, you would type in the address, and then is it under contract? Is not under contract. And then if it's not under contract, is it listed and actively marketed? Will it be listed and actively marketed? Or is the buyer trying to sell it on their own, basically? Now we come down to the disclosures. Buyer has received a copy, buyer has not, buyer is exempt. So the most of the time you're going to be only clicking this one if it's a new build. Not all or not all new build builders do a builder's contract. Some do use the 2T, and then there will not be a residential property and owners association's disclosure because it's new. So in this case, we did receive it. If they did not receive it, then you have this that you would click, and then the seller has 3 days to get it to you, and that's calendar days. That is not business days. A lot of agents will send this back and have change it to this and have you initial. That is not needed. The email is proof enough. That is the end of the third calendar day. I like keeping my contracts clean. Talk to your broker in charge of how they prefer you to do it. We have received the mineral and oil rates. I cannot think of a time where I personally dealt with an exempt from North Carolina mineral and oil and gas rates because even new builds have them. I've had foreclosures, court order sales, they've all had the mineral and oil rates. So I'm not really sure when this would come into place. If I ever run across it, I'll do a video on it. Now, with the ownership, has the seller owned the property for at least 1 year? Has the owner owned the property for less than 1 year? In this case, they have. And if the property is not owned yet by them, that's going to be like an assignment, probate, divorce, not, there's different reasons. Lead-based paint. We're going to click this just so I can make sure we do something later on into the contract, but anything built prior to 1978, so from 1977 to the beginning of time, this button needs to be clicked, or this checkbox needs to be checked because we have to have a lead-based paint. Does not mean that there's lead-based, but there's a whole nother form for that. This is about the only spot, there's one other spot I can think of offhand, that it is okay to leave blank. Because if you don't check either of these boxes, there's nothing to fill out. In this case, we do not have a homeowners association. If there is a homeowners association and you do not know it, reach out to the listing agent and find out. Or you can also look at other homes for sale in that neighborhood. Not everyone fills out the homeowners association information on the residential property disclosure. So do a little research, find out, call the HOA, find out what the dues are. In this case, we don't have one. Fuel tank, fuel system. Um, Best of the seller's knowledge, there is or is not. So there's not a fuel tank. This is important, especially since we click this one right here, because it's an older home. There is a good chance there might be one below ground. So double check on this. It is a big environmental issue if there's one underground and it's leaking and it can come back and bite you. More into that at a later video or talk to your broker in charge. Now, if it is obvious there's a propane tank, then click there is one and find out. Most of the time, propane tanks are not owned, they're leased or not necessarily leased, kind of just like placed somewhere. And as long as you're getting it filled, they keep it there. It's a part of getting it propane. So then there's also gasoline or diesel for older homes with oil heat. We don't deal with that too much in my area. Some of the older, like 40s homes, does still have oil heat. Smells like a semi truck lighting up every time, but it is. We're just gonna go with there's no fuel tank. If there's multiple fuel tanks, there's another spot. Leases. This is going to come into place if you are buying a house or your buyer is buying a house where there's a tenant in place. I am currently negotiating a deal. There are multiple tenants in place. So if they're buying it and there's a tenant in place and they've already been given a notice, if there's a tenant in place and they're going to remain in place, so you're basically buying to hold and using it as a rental, depends on the situation. But in this case, the house is vacant. We're just going to say it's vacant and make life easy without going into too much detail, and there is no lease. On this page, this is where deeds, taxes, and fees, this is who's going on it. So Chris is going to go, why am I not able to type today? Sorry, you guys. Chris is going to go on it, and in this case, Chris is the only one on the loan, but Chris has a wife, and we're just gonna say Christine, because why not? So make sure whoever's going to go on the deed is here. There are several different ways to type this out. If you have questions, this is an attorney question because in North Carolina, we have marital rights without going into too much legal details. And so we put the wife there so they know there's different ways of deeding a property. That's a legal question for an attorney of how to fill that out. With home warranties, if the seller is offering a home warranty on the MLS or in the sale, then they're most likely going to say what type of home warranty it is or from who here. and how much they're willing to pay for it. If they're not offering one and your buyer does not want, you would click no home warranty. In this case, they're not offering one, but we would like to request one, and we're going to say no more than $750. Now, when it comes to the possession, is the buyer wanting to go into the house before they close? You would click this one. Is the seller wanting to stay in the house after closing? This one. Now, possession is subject to right of tenants. This one. That is a whole different situation that I'm not going to go over in this. I'm not going to go over any of this in this one. These all have problems or potential problems behind them, and you need to talk to your broker in charge or an attorney to determine if these are best for your buyer or seller in the situation. Here, we're going to include the FHA VA financial addendum because we are doing a VA loan, and this is the spot where we're clicking the lead-based paint again. There are two spots for this, which drives me crazy. I really wish we only had this spot, but for some reason, we have two. So we're going to click it. That is why I did it earlier. Then, if you have additional provisions, additional signatures, backup contract, addendum, loan assumption addendum, identify any attorney or party drafted addendum. Most of the time, you're going to use this for your appraisal addendum. Recently, we've been able to connect buyer agency commission or buyer agency compensation to this if we're going to ask the seller to pay for it. We're probably going to have an updated contract next year once again. Um, new construction addendum, owner association, disclosure addendum, seller financing addendum, short sale addendum, and vacational rental addendum. Click the appropriate squares. On to the next section. This is where your buyer's name is going to go. Keep hitting that O. They're in here. If you had an LLC or a trust, a corporation, etc., they would go here. The name, so if Chris owned a property or company and he was buying it, it would go here, his name, his title, and then he would sign here. We are selling it, so I would sign here. Same thing with if I was an LLC, a corporation, or a trust, it would go there. So this is the second spot that is okay to leave blank right here. The attorneys will deal with this information. Do not fill this information out. If your broker in charge says otherwise, ask why. Sellers get to see and buyers get to see. So in this case, yes, there's a whole reason why we don't fill this out. I'm not even sure why it's still even there. The attorneys might fill it out later on. I don't know. This is also important. We're going to have I'm at on point. We're also just going to say BBC Realty, since that's the one we always use. And here we'll go XYZ. So we're not advertising anyone in particular. I'm the buyer's agent. There's the seller agent. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We're just going to make sure you put the broker's address on both sides. So we'll just say 1 XYZ way. And then 1, 2, 3 ABC way. Then we're just going to say Bob Joe, or you know what? Let's go with John Doe. I cannot type today. I apologize. Jane Doe. You also want to make sure that their license numbers are in. Oh, well, they can't have the same license number. Their phone numbers. And their emails. So our firm does not have a fax, and a lot of firms don't have faxes. So yeah, you can leave that blank. And then here, just make sure all this information is correct, that, this is the amount of due diligence, that the firm's name is here, that the listing agent's name is here, that the seller acknowledgement is correct, that if there's escrow, make sure it's here, that the firm's name is here. Once again, my firm does not hold earnest money, so it goes to our attorneys. If there's additional earnest money, some software for some reason puts the buyer's signature in this spot, calling you out, loop. Make sure that's not there. And then other than that, you're done. So just a quick recap. Everything, seller, buyer, property address filled out. If there's additional parcels, these need to be checked. So this is okay not to be checked. How they're going to pay it. You can ask the listing agent before. Normally, I'll click official bank check and electronic transfer, or personal check. I'll click multiple options. Earnest money, normally you're going to be dealing with your attorney on a regular basis, so you're going to know. In my case, I know it's a wire transfer. Make sure these have zeros. Due diligence, seller concessions, closing date, attorney. In short, just go over your contract, especially, if we have deadlines and so on for offers, we move quickly. And that you have no blank spots, that everything is missing. Because there's one spot on contracts that I am constantly forgetting to do, and it is coming up if I can remember to see it, because this is why. This spot right here. When you have everything, it's hidden. I normally don't have my screen zoomed in this much, so I'm constantly forgetting to click that box. But otherwise, everything is filled out the way it's supposed to be filled out. If you have questions, if you can't find something, you're not sure how to do something, ask your broker in charge, ask an agent you can trust in your firm. I still have agents outside of my firm that have had long time, you know, experience over me. So I will still call them. Or if I have a question that I think is dumb and I don't want to ask my broker in charge, or if I know it's a certain situation where someone else that I know personally has way more experience, then I will ask them. Other than that, you know, that's pretty much how to fill out the 2T. If you are provisional, make sure your broker in charge checks over it. And I will continue making more videos of how to go over basic documents. And, have a good day. Go out and sell something.